We have, unironically, one of, if not the worst government that we have ever had in Britain right at this moment. And it's only just gone 100 days. If you were ever wondering, oh, how can the clown decade which we are most certainly in get any worse, I think ceding even more sovereign territory that nobody else has a claim over is probably one of the worst things you can do. What am I talking about? I am talking about a little archipelago in the Indian Ocean known as the Chagos Islands. And we will get into the importance of them over the course of the video. All you need to know for now is that the UK will give sovereignty of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius. A state that, according to a lot of the climate cultists, isn't even supposed to exist at this point in time because sea level rise is just too much. The UK has announced it is giving up sovereignty of a remote but strategically important cluster of islands in the Indian Ocean after more than half a century. If that doesn't scream incompetence, I don't know what will. Because the story of these islands, as you will see, mean that this decision makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. The deal reached after years of negotiations will see the UK hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius in a historic move. This includes the tropical atoll of Diego Garcia, used by the US government as a military base for its naval ships and long-range bomber aircraft, and the UK obviously uses it too, given its UK territory. The announcement made in a joint statement by the British and Mauritian Prime Ministers on Thursday ends decades of often fractious negotiations between the two countries over the islands. The US-UK base will remain on Diego Garcia, a key factor enabling the deal that will go forward at a time of growing geopolitical rivalries in the region between Western countries, India and China. The deal is still subject to finalisation of a treaty, but both sides have vowed to complete this as quickly as possible. Just to make things clear, Mauritius is effectively a vassal state of China, and apparently part of this deal is that we actually get to keep the part of the Chagos Islands that is actually strategically important, which is the US-UK base. However, I think you are completely naive to think that this is in any way a good decision. Why you would trust a Chinese vassal to actually keep its side of the deal, and if you think that a Chinese military base is not going to be made either somewhere on Mauritius or somewhere on the Chagos Islands, you are kidding yourself. This is a geopolitical blunder of the highest degree. These people are not fit for office. And yet 20% of the UK demos decided that no, actually, they are. Because nobody else had a good alternative. You know, the big split on the right was between Tories and Reform. Tory simps can go on all they want about saying, oh, Reform split the vote, now we're in this mess, blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe they should have done a better job while they're in government. Maybe they should have made a deal, or honoured the deal they made with Reform, and actually cut immigration, actually stop the vote, actually do something that Reform voters wanted. Well, if they're not doing it, of course we're going to go over to Reform. What choice have you given us? We are not to be beaten into submission. Please do as we wished. Following 2 years of negotiations, this is a seminal moment in our relationship and a demonstration of enduring commitment to the peaceful resolution of disputes and the rule of law. The statement from the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Mauritius Prime Minister Pravind Jugnauth read, unbelievable. Is this what we're going to do with all our disputed territory now? Just give it away? But at least we get to keep military bases there for 100 years. The leaders also said they were committed to ensure the long-term, secure and effective operation of the existing base on Diego Garcia, which plays a vital role in the regional and global security. Both parties said the treaty would address wrongs of the past and demonstrate a commitment of both parties to support the welfare of Chagosians. The two countries will set up a new partnership, with the UK providing a package of financial support to Mauritius. It's not bad enough they're getting the sovereignty of the islands that they have no claim on, we'll get into that soon, but also we're giving yet again more money away to, frankly, foreign sovereign states that are tacitly against us. They have no claim on that island, they gave it away in 1965, and the main reason that they started causing a fuss about it is because they became a vassal state of China. Not only have they robbed us of sovereignty, they are robbing our foreign aid budget as well. including a focus on infrastructure. We don't owe them that. Mauritius will now be able to bring in a program of resettlement on the Chagos Islands, except the military base island of Diego Garcia. So I suppose at least we get to keep the important bit, but obviously the problem comes in is what happens to the rest of the islands? Is China going to try and build up a military presence there? Because if that happens, that's pretty bad. But I suppose at this point, since apparently we're talking about Britain owing Mauritius money as well as giving away the sovereign land that they have no claim over, we'll get into details of the history of the Chagos Islands. So long story short, on the colonial history of these islands, Portuguese explorers found the islands at first, which allowed them to name the islands, Chagos referring to the holy wounds of the crucifixion of Jesus. However, it was the French who first laid claim to the Chagos after they settled Ile Bourbon in 1665, renamed by the French to Mauritius in 1715, and then they began issuing permits for companies to establish coconut oil plantations on Chagos in the 1770s. So that's when it really started to get inhabited. Because this is the important part of this. The Chagos Islands have been pretty much entirely uninhabited its entire history until colonialists started colonising the island. Completely uninhabited. Basically, there are no natives there, or at least before colonial times. Anyway, after the establishment of these coconut oil plantations, in 1786, the Chagos Islands and Diego Garcia were claimed for Great Britain, and then they were fully ceded to Britain after Napoleon's defeat in the treaty in 1814. The Chagos Islands were governed from Mauritius, which was then at the time also a British colony, because the French gave it to us. And so the British obviously took over the coconut oil plantations, obviously at first used slaves, and then in 1840 made the slaves free, and these free slaves then effectively became the what I guess you could call native islanders, where they stayed and worked and obviously made their own culture and settlements on the island from 1840 onward for about a century. Because then in 1965 the UK purchased the entire Chagos archipelago from the self-governing colony of Mauritius for £3 million to create the British Indian Ocean Territory. For reference, due to inflation, that is just under £50 million that they purchased these islands with a few inhabitants from. The UK government decided that they were going to close the plantation to provide the British territory from which the US would conduct its military activities in the region. Effectively, what then happened was every Chagosian was forcibly removed from the island, not necessarily by peaceful means, between 1967 and 1973. Given that they were on British overseas territory, they could actually successfully apply for British citizenship, but they would have to effectively pay for their own accommodation and way back to Britain. Either that or they were moved to Mauritius or Seychelles. And long story short, after their removal, a naval base for the US and UK was built on Diego Garcia after all the plantations were shut down and the Chagosians removed to wherever they went to after, and it's been a naval base of operations for the US and UK ever since. Very strategically important, especially for the UK, where it is our only British overseas territory in the Indian Ocean, which is very important for our navy. And I think one thing that you will understand here is that actually it says very, very clearly that given that we purchased the islands from Mauritius, they actually have absolutely no claim over it anymore. Being paid £3 million in 1965 for these islands means that Mauritius agreed, okay, these are yours now, Britain. And now we're giving it back. Not only are we giving it back, we're giving them money for the pleasure too, despite the fact that effectively they costed £50 million in today's money. So I have no idea why we're just giving it back, but that is exactly what Mauritius has been demanding since 2010. On 20 December 2010, Mauritius initiated proceedings against the UK under the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea to challenge the legality of the Chagos Archipelago MPA. The issue of compensation and repatriation of the former inhabitants of several of the archipelago's atoll, exiled since 1973, continues in litigation and as of 23 August 2010 has been submitted to the European Court of Human Rights by a group of former residents. Again, I'm happy to say that we did not treat these people as well as we probably should have when we were deporting them. Probably should have given them money, probably should have given them support. It's not exactly fair that we brought the island to then force these people off. It is quite funny, though, that a lot of leftists are trying to say, oh, all these people are natives to the island, and then at the same time we'll be saying that the English don't exist. I'm just saying. And anyway, obviously these litigations continued, there was a whole back and forth. The last Tory government said that they were looking into this as a way to kick the can down the road, and effectively that kind of shot themselves in the foot because then Labour got in, and we find ourselves in the modern day. Now, the reason I go over all this history is to make absolutely clear there is absolutely no logical reason to give Mauritius these islands back whatsoever, unless they're planning to pay billions for them. It's far too valuable to us to just give away, let alone even sell. And yet here we are in the clown world where that actually happened, where we are just giving it away. Anyway, back to the article. The UK will ensure operation of the military base for an initial period of 99 years. The US also supported the decision, with President Joe Biden releasing a statement applauding the historic deal. It is a clear demonstration that through diplomacy and partnership, countries can overcome long-standing historical challenges. Again, this was 14 years, to reach peaceful and mutual beneficial outcomes, President Biden said. This was literally never a problem until 2010. Why did that happen? Probably because that's when China started expanding rapidly into its empire. Why do they think they can get away with this? Well, because it turns out they can. We are literally going hand over foot to try and appease them. What advantage is it going to give us? I would love to see. In recent years, because apparently this is a long-standing historical challenge, the UK has faced rising diplomatic isolation over its claim to what it refers to as the British Indian Ocean Territory, with various UN bodies, including its top court and General Assembly, overwhelmingly siding with Mauritius. Wow, can't believe that. And demanding the UK surrender what some have called its last colony in Africa. Okay, but again, if we purchased it, and Mauritius, who only happened to be governing it as, oh my god, a British colony until its independence, in which we purchased this off them, apparently that means that they can just go back on the deal, and Starmer's and David Lammy, by the way, were enough of an idiot to go ahead and actually give it to them. Incredible. The government of Mauritius has long argued it was illegally forced to give the Chagos Islands away in return for its own independence from the UK in 1968. That's not even when it was purchased 3 years before that. At the time, the British government has already negotiated a secret deal with the US, agreeing to lease it to the largest atoll, Diego Garcia, for use as a military base. Yes, I am not shocked that we made a deal with the world hegemon and our own ally to let them use an island we were going to purchase as a military base. What a shocker. Britain later apologised for forcibly removing more than 1,000 islanders from the entire archipelago and promised to hand the island to Mauritius when they were no longer needed for strategic purposes. Which is the opposite of the situation we're in, I see. But until very recently, the UK insisted that Mauritius itself had no legitimate claim to the islands, because it doesn't. It never had them when it became independent. It was always British. Well, actually, no, that's not true. It was French at first. But even then, it was governed by Seychelles until it was given to Mauritius during British colonialism, and it was purchased off the colony by the British state to be a British territory. By all these standards, an independent Mauritius has never had claims on the Chagos Islands. So it was only recently that international opinion began to shift on this issue against Britain. For a start, African nations began to speak with one voice on the issue, pushing the UK hard on the issue of decolonisation. Of course they were. Then Brexit left many European nations reluctant to continue backing the UK's stance in international forums. The Mauritian government went on the attack, accusing the UK government of verbal threats. And the Mauritians began to wage an increasingly sophisticated campaign at the UN, in courts and in the media, even landing and planting a flag on the archipelago without British authorisation. Wow, they are so hard. Well, believe it or not, despite all odds, we've done many things in the past that were unpopular internationally, and guess what happens? Wow, nothing. But we are currently under a government who prefer the international community to British communities. Therefore, of course, they're just giving this away. It's what the international community want. Why wouldn't we do what they want? The answer is because they just hate us. The Europeans are petty enough to let this go over Brexit. The US, while Joe Biden says he's happy, will absolutely not be happy to hear that what was our sovereign state is now effectively enemy sovereign state, and this base will now be under constant pressure, which I don't think either the UK military or the US will be happy about. And again, it's all because we've got these weak clowns in power. I can't see them lasting much longer. They admit fault to things they say weren't their fault, with the whole Keir Starmer giving money back for the gifts he was given. They are literally ceding sovereign territory that is, by all intents, purposes and right, ours, and they are literally paying the robbers as they take it. How in any way is that sensible adults backing government? This is buffoonery to the highest degree. The article goes on to say the negotiations that brought about Thursday's deal began years before Sir Keir Starmer became Prime Minister, but the timing of this breakthrough reflects a growing sense of urgency in international affairs, not least regarding Ukraine, with the UK keen to remove the Chagos Islands as an obstacle to winning more global support, particularly from African nations with the prospect of a second Trump presidency looming. Amazing. So, not only did we give it away, we paid money to the people we gave it away to, all for what comes down to, yet again, soft power. Oh, we did it because we wanted global support from African nations. Why? Oh, because Trump might be coming into the presidency again. What is this logic? We gave up £50 million islands for some global support. But the thing is, I say £50 million, it's practically priceless. It is our only international territory in the Indian Ocean with a military base on. Okay, we get to keep the military base. You can't guarantee it's going to stay there forever if in 99 years we have to give it up. Like, what's going to happen then? We had this exact issue with Hong Kong. It was leased from China to us for 100 years. Really, we were hoping that we could get it under control and actually take it back as our territory. Never actually happened, and Tony Blair gave it away. Oh, well, you get new Labour in again. More sovereign territories being given away. Thanks, Labour. I hope that support from African countries in the global community will help, but we all know what's going to happen. They are not going to give us an inch, and we have given them literally miles. I cannot get over how stupid this decision is. I think the worst part is that this isn't even for the natives. Any argument on that is just wrong. The Chagos Islanders themselves, some in Mauritius, some in Seychelles, others living in Crawley, do not speak with one voice on the fate of their homeland. Some are determined to return to live on the isolated islands, some are more focused on their rights and status in the UK, while others argue that the Chagos archipelago status should not be resolved by outsiders. So if we're saying, oh, this is for the natives, this is for the islanders, it's not true. Most of them care more about living in the UK than going back to some isolated, unimportant islands. Okay, some want to go back there, fair enough, but I'm afraid the answer's no. And again, if any leftist comes at you, but that's their native homeland, I ask them if England exists, and if they say no, then there's no such thing as a native. That's as far as that conversation can be bothered to go. Anyway, it is with this decision that I have found it so unbelievable I have actually gone out of my way to write to my MP, and I sincerely hope that you do too. This beyond moronic decision needs to be challenged, and frankly the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, needs to answer and give us very good reasons for doing this. Not only is this costing us a key strategic location in the Indian Ocean, it is costing us yet more money. More money in a £22 billion black hole. So first thing you need to do is go to a link that I have given you down below that lets you find your MP for your constituency. Once you find them, you can click on their name and they will give you an address and an email address that you can send this letter to. You can either send it via post or via email, it doesn't really matter. In my experience, letters tend to get more of a response. Once you've done that, write it like an ordinary letter with this as the main body. I am writing to you to advise strongly against giving sovereignty of a key strategic archipelago of the Chagos Islands away to Mauritius. There are many geopolitical reasons to keep sovereignty over these uninhabited islands. They are a key strategic location in the Indian Ocean and are exclusively used as a joint naval base for the US and UK forces, the only one we have in the Indian Ocean. Giving this up will be nothing short of disastrous, especially in a turbulent time for geopolitics, as there are rising tensions in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. There is absolutely no reason to give these islands to Mauritius. They have never had sovereignty over the archipelago that is over 300 miles away, only as a colony first by the French, then by the British. When the British split sovereignty of the Chagos Islands from Mauritius in 1965, when they were granted independence, Mauritius agreed and lost all claims to the islands. Chagos Islanders who were forced off the islands were considered British citizens, and many currently live in Britain as full citizens. With all these facts, I can see absolutely no reason to give our only naval base in the Indian Ocean away. It is a decision that will damage Labour's reputation on foreign affairs beyond repair. I ask you please to write to the Foreign Secretary with my concerns, and please push for us to not give sovereignty of this vital location away. Now, this will unlikely be to change the actual decision itself, but what this will force my MP and your MP, if you write a letter, to do is to have a reply off David Lammy, and no doubt it will be a one-size-fits-all reply from David Lammy and the Foreign Office. But then when we get this reply, we need to use it against Labour with all our might, because David Lammy is nothing short of a liability. Keir Starmer doesn't know what he's doing on foreign affairs. All these people know how to do is serve someone above them. And as far as even Keir Starmer has admitted, that's the party of Davos, as Steve Bannon has alluded to many times in the past. It's the international community. They are happy to literally give away islands for free, and even give these people money, despite the fact that we brought it off them 50 odd years ago, close to 60 years ago, doesn't really matter, because the international community demand it. How foolish do you have to be as Foreign Secretary to just hear opposing arguments and then just agree with them all when it comes to our own sovereignty? Let alone any argument, your own sovereignty. No. Sovereignty is your sovereignty. If you have that land and you defend it, it is yours. That is just historical realism. This is exactly what Israel are fighting about. This is exactly what the Ukraine are fighting about. Apparently, if we were going to be invaded, Keir Starmer is the type of person who would just say, take it. But that's what I'm learning from here. In fact, not only take it, I will pay you to take it. It is a completely untenable position. It is one that frankly should get a government thrown out of Parliament. Alas, we have to wait a few years before we can do that democratically. So in the meantime, we may as well prepare a tax on Labour for this sort of thing, which is exactly what these letters are for. So, with that, I would like to thank you very much for watching. In terms of streams, I will be doing another Dustborn playthrough, which is, considering how serious this video was, quite funny to say, but there should be a Dustborn playthrough probably tonight. And then possibly another one Sunday. Monday, on the topic of geopolitics, we are over at the Worcester Club doing a history of Roman antiquity, on the geopolitics of it all, and Jack is starting us off on Monday with that. Tuesday, it's going to be Tosh Talks. Don't know what the topic is yet, but we've had plenty of suggestions. If you want to give your own, please join the Discord, the Worcester Club Discord down below. And then we'll have Dustborn back on Wednesdays again. And Laughing at the Guardian will be next Saturday as well. Videos out as and when I do them. You're lucky you've had 3 videos in a row, and you definitely have another one coming out Saturday, so prepare for that. In the meantime, don't forget to write to your MP if you live in Britain. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe, become a member, all that good stuff. And once again, until next time, goodbye.